Okay, so substitution is another method to solve a system of linear equations. So there's going to be two equations, and same thing with elimination as well. These questions are not too bad, except when there are fractions, and you have to clear the fractions first. Usually when you do substitution, you're going to isolate one of the variables, either x or y, and often one of the variables has a coefficient of 1, which means that that's going to make your life easier. If it doesn't have a 1 in front of it, if you pick a variable that has a 2 or 3 or whatever, it's fine. You can still do it. You'll just have to do more algebra. Okay? So it's up to you. So if you are a procedure kind of person, if you're the kind of person who likes to make study sheets or whatever, then these are the steps that you're going to use. There is a little bit of format or communication to this. So you'll want to number the equations 1 and 2, because we're going to write down the steps. Solve solve 1 for x or whatever, so that you can follow your solution nicely. Then you're going to, like I said, choose x or y. It doesn't matter. And then we're going to substitute. So substitute is replacing. So wherever you see an x, you put the equation, or if you choose y, you put the equation in for that. So then that's going to get rid of the other variable in the equation. So now we'll only have one. So we'll either have an equation for x or an equation for y. So you'll get x equals or y equals, doesn't matter. Then you substitute the other one in, because we always want our point of intersection to be an ordered pair, right? An x value and a y value. And then of course, do a left side, right side check to get full marks. So the first example is all filled out for you, okay? So just follow along. So again, you need to number the equations 1 and 2. For whatever reason, the format we usually use is to put a 1 and then a circle, or in 2 and a circle. And then you're going to choose one of the equations, and it doesn't matter, and isolate for one of the variables, either x or y, okay? So if you look at these equations, we have negative 5x and y, 6x and 3y. So when you are isolating for a variable, the fact that this has no number in front of it is going to make your life easier. Could you do the negative 5x, the 6x, or the 3y? Yes. But then your last step will always be to divide by that number, which is fine, but sometimes then you get fractions and people don't like that, right? So if you can, and you won't always be able to, but if you can, choose the equation that only that has a variable with a 1 in front of it. So from equation 1, we're going to solve for y. So then when you label them 1 and 2, you know which equation you're talking about. And in the red, I can't photocopy color, but if you want to highlight it, I chose the first equation since it's easier. The y has a coefficient of 1, and this time, you don't have to make it, because we're not going to graph, you don't have to do y equals mx plus b. So here, we just moved the 5x over. I didn't make it into y equals mx plus b form. If you like that and you want to do that, you can, but you don't have to, okay? Because we're not going to graph this time. Okay, so now I'm going to take this whole thing and sub it into equation number 2. And the whole point is that you're going to, instead of having two variables, which we can't really solve, we're going to, wherever we see a y, we're going to put this expression, and now we only have x's. When you do this, you're going to have to distribute, collect like terms, all that kind of stuff. So the stuff we reviewed from grade 9. So in the second equation, I replace y with negative 2 plus 5x. So here's the y, I put it in there, and then if you are an arrow person for distribution, draw them in. Be careful of signs. So 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. 3 times 5 is 15x, and then this one has nothing. Usually the equations will be like this. There are some, maybe you have to simplify it first, which just has extra steps. Normally it'll be x, y, and a number on the right-hand side. So when you go to do the check, it'll be left side you'll have to do some work, and right side will be just a number. So again, this is showing like it distributed, and then move the term over. Maybe you can do this, you don't have to show this step in the middle here. You decide for yourself. More work is better than less work. Maybe you need to show this step as well. They didn't do that. If you want to slide that in there, that you're dividing by the 21 to get the x by itself. So now you have x equals 2, and you need to find the y. Technically, the ordered pair should work in both equations, but normally what we do is, so here we sub this expression into equation 2, then you go sub this into equation 1. You go and do the other one. Okay, plug it in. Again, decide for yourself how much work you need to show. This should be easier than this simplifying was, okay? And then you get an ordered pair. In the homework, you might have to estimate, maybe you'll have a fraction, maybe you'll have a decimal, but on the test, you should get a whole number. If you don't, then you've done something wrong, okay? We try to make it nice and easy for you. So the point of intersection is 2. So the x value goes first, and then 8. And then this is just a left side, right side check. Now, this is a very fancy way of writing left side, right side check. You don't really have to do it like this with a diagonal line. So this is equation 1. You have to check in both. But when you do the check, like I said, the right side is usually just a number. Okay, so the check part isn't too difficult. You're just going to have to do a little bit of algebra on the left side. And again, decide for yourself how much work you need to show. Okay? Now, depending on what kind of relationship you have with your calculator, then typing this into your calculator is fine. But sometimes kids will make a mistake in the check, and then it looks like your answer's wrong when it's really not, right? So just make sure you're not cutting steps if you, and then making mistakes that aren't, that are looking like your answer's wrong when really it's not. Now, if you're doing the homework, the answer's in the back of the book, you can check, but obviously on a quiz, you can't, or a test, you can't do that. Okay, so let's do some examples. So solve by substitution and check your answer. So you will have questions where it says to solve by substitution and to solve by elimination. So you have to do what I've asked you to do. When we do the word problems, you can choose, okay? So eventually there will be some choice, but you have to show me that you can do the two methods, as well as graphing, okay? So label them 1 and 2. And again, it does not matter. You can choose x, you can choose y, you can choose 1, you can choose 2, but which one is going to make my life easier? Which should I choose? Yes. Y. Good. Now, it's just a coincidence. The other example was y. This one happens to be y. It could have been x. It doesn't matter. So again, this is not y equals mx plus b form. That touches your dark side and you want to change it into that, you can, but we're not graphing, so you don't need to, okay? So now this was equation 2, so I'm going to sub this into equation 1. And wherever I see a y, I'm going to put this expression. So 3x stays the same. Okay? And then we have a y. So we have to put in, and then the 8 has nothing, so just put it down. Because we're substituting. We don't want y's, we want just x's, so that we can do some simple algebra and get an answer, okay? So here, is decision time. How much work do I need to show? And it doesn't matter. I don't judge. Show as much work as you want to, okay? So if you are an arrow person, draw some arrows. -2, so that's going to affect the sign. So -2 times 7 is -14. -2 times -4x is positive 8x. Maybe in your head you knew that the x term was going to go with the other x term. Maybe you want to write it in front of the -14. That doesn't even matter either. So now 3x and 8x is 11x. And then 8, and you move the 14 over, so it becomes positive. And if you're not good at mental math, you can use a calculator all the time. You can't use your phone as a calculator. You need a calculator. But you can certainly do 22 divided by 11. It doesn't matter. Do what makes you successful, okay? So now we have an x value, so we're going to sub x equals 2 into, so we sub something into number 1, so then you want to sub this into number 2. Sorry, I'm running. Remember, if it says check, you're going to get marks for that, so make sure you do that. So it says to check. And you have to check in both, okay? So there are instances where it might work in one and not in the other if you've done it wrong. Oops. So when you do check, you want to make sure the left-hand side of the equation equals the right. So wherever it's an x, we're going to put the 2. And wherever there's a y, we're going to put a -1. And again, you decide how much work you need to show here. 3 times 2 is 6. -2 times -1 is +2. The right side is just a number, usually. Okay, so then, yep, I'm right. So the check, usually, as long as you remember to do it, are easy marks, okay? It's good that you can check your answer. However, sometimes students can find it frustrating because then you know you've done something wrong if it doesn't work, right? So try to make sure you budget your time and don't, and you move on. You don't, the first page where you have to do like just knowledge, substitution, whatever, that you don't get stuck here and then don't do the word problems later. So decide for yourself how you want to show this -1. Lots of people like to leave it in brackets so that you take into account the negative. It's going to change the sign here, right? So now we've got 8 minus 1, which is 7. Do you have a question? Okay, so not too bad. This one, the next one, just looks a little bit weird because they're already both y equals, which actually just makes your life easier. You don't have to rearrange them to substitute at all. So, I mean, it doesn't matter. You could literally say sub 1 into 2. You could say sub you could write it like that because they're already both y equals. So we're just going to essentially set them equal to each other, really. But you can follow the same format as the other ones. Okay, so then you have, it's all this, it looks similar. So wherever I see a y, I'm going to put 2x plus 1. So you have to bring the x over to most people put the variable on the left, bring the number over to the right. So again, decide if you need to do that in 2 steps, you can do it in 1 step, doesn't matter. So 2 plus 3x is 5x. 11 minus 1 is 10. Again, it really doesn't matter, but if you want to follow the same procedure, so since we did sub y equals 2x plus 1 into 2, now we'll do sub x equals 2 into 1. Okay, so we'll do the other equation just like we did for the other example. going to do our check because it says to check, so you get marks for it. So check in number 1. So the left side is just y, which is 5. So again, one side is just a number, the other side we have to do a little bit of algebra. So then the only really trick to this is what happens if you have fractions. So similar to what you would have done with just straight up distribution questions, you have to clear the fractions first. So you clear the fractions in 1 and 2. You don't have to clear them using the same number. In this case, it's 2s and 3s in both bottoms, but you don't have to do that. Or it doesn't have to be the same, but so the lowest common multiple between 2 and 3 is 6. So we're going to multiply the whole equation by 6. So because the terms are subtract, and then the second one they're add, you have to do, every single term has to be multiplied, right? You want to get rid of the denominator in every single one. So this is now 6 divided by 2, which is 3. 6 divided by 3, which is 2y. So then this one is 2 times 6, which is 12, divided by 3, which is 4. I think there's a little bit of a typo. Can you guys add a negative in here? Sorry about that. So then negative 2 times 6 is negative 12, divided by 3 is negative 4. So now this is going to be our first equation. These are called equivalent equations, so we have only multiplied, but we multiplied every single term by the same number. Yes. I want to get rid of the 2 and the 3. Down here. Right, so because it's all 2s and 3s, the easiest thing to do to clear them is the number you're going to multiply by, just multiply them together. So to get rid of 2 and 3, then do 2 times 3, which is 6. So if it was like 6 and 4 is in the bottom, then you would do 24. You could do 24. So down here, these are also 2s and 3s, but they don't have to be the same. But we're going to do the same thing. We'll do 6. Please, it is very rare to have fraction questions, but just so you have a strategy to deal with them. Okay, so now we have 6 divided by 2, 6 divided by 3, and 8 times 6, which is 48, excuse me, divided by 3, which is 16. If you want, if you hate fractions and you want to kind of make a little, like a side for yourself, so then this becomes 6. Like write out this step. But you don't have to. But if that makes more sense to you, like showing more work is no big deal. Okay, so this one, neither of the variables have coefficients of 1, so you can pick whatever you like. This situation here is what we're going to do next, which is called elimination. So your eyes eventually, if you go back and study and you look at this example, you might say to yourself, well, I would have used elimination here. But again, just make sure if the question says you have to use substitution, make sure you use substitution, okay? So it doesn't really matter now. If you, let's say these numbers were all even, then to divide by 2 would be nice because then you're going to get a nice number. But this 3 is going to mess things up no matter what. Okay, so there are ways to help yourself. Maybe you don't like to divide by negative numbers, so you want to pick the x. It really doesn't matter. And if your friend picks something else, you guys should get the same answer. There should only be one point of intersection. So it doesn't matter the method you choose. So I'll just do y in 1. Okay, so now it may be helpful here to show quite a bit of work because we need to get rid of that 2, but that 2 is going to affect both terms. Again, because they're subtracting, it's not multiplying, so you can't just kind of divide and cancel. So if you don't like fractions or this kind of stuff, changing the sign, integers messes you up, then show lots of work, okay? We're going to divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2, okay? So these ones cancel, or negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1. So now we're left with y, which is what we want. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 is positive 2. And now you have a decision to make, okay? So even if you're given a fraction question, to give an irrational number it's difficult to check. It's difficult to say, get a point of intersection that actually is useful and makes sense. In the word problems, we're going to do money. So like 5 cents is 0.05. So maybe, the decimals there will not be, might give you weird answers. But for this, even if we use a fraction, you can do that. But 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. And it's not repeating, like it's 1.5. So you can change that into a decimal to make your life easy as well. Just make sure you remember it's negative 3 divided by negative 2. So it's positive 1.5x. So if you despise fractions, then why not, okay? Even if it was an irrational number and the decimal was repeating, then when you went to do the, and you would have to round. Then when you went to do the check, then it would be an approximate. You should get really, really close. So, don't stress yourself out. However, you won't get an irrational X value or Y value on the test, okay? For sure. I don't want to squish down there, so I'm going to go up here. I'm going to use this 2, not the fraction 2. If you choose to go back up to this one, that's fine. You'll just have to clear the fractions again. So if I left this as 3/2, then you could cancel, it'll work itself out. It's not so bad to have fractions, but some people, when you see a fraction, then your hackles get up and it sends you for a loop and it doesn't really need to. When you get to grade 11 or grade 12, the question might ask you for exact form where you have to leave something as a fraction. Next year, you're going to do radical expressions like this. And you might have to leave it at like that in exact form, but in grade 10, that's not an expectation. Okay, so again, we have to distribute. Okay, so I think we'll do elimination day 1 because it's actually really easy. And then we'll have a break and then we'll do elimination day 2. And then and you'll have like a chunk of time before lunch, hopefully, to do the homework, okay? So here, the homework is on every single note. It's also on D2L, but if you want, there is a box around it. If you're a highlighter person, highlight that, okay? So that's from your textbook to practice substitution. So then if you flip the page to do elimination day 1, you'll actually notice if you go to the behind it, it's actually the old textbook because actually the questions. Can you turn the page for me? And then turn it again. Okay. Well, all of it though. Like, we're not done. This test is pretty straightforward. Graphing, substitution, elimination, and word problems. Okay?